Welcome to Ignite Intimacy, a podcast exploring intimacy, romantic relationships, sexuality, and everything that relates to these hot topics. We're going in. Are you ready? This is your host, Laura Aisha. Let's do this. Robert.
Hi.
Hi. This is Ignite Intimacy, live and direct from Los Angeles. Part two. Yeah. I have to look back and see what number your episode was. Let me actually just do that because I want to make sure that our listeners know that you have been on the podcast before. And we had a great conversation about men and intimacy. And here it is, episode 72, June 5th, my birthday week.
All right.
Yeah. Cool. So check it out. Here with, your last name is pronounced
Kandell.
Kandell. Okay. So Robert Kandell.
You did great. It is the hardest part about podcasting is doing the names.
Totally.
Yeah.
Robert was with us for episode 72. And we had a great conversation. Actually, it was like one of those conversations that I really felt just super energized by. And, it's so great to meet you in the flesh. And most of my guests I've recorded with virtually. So we haven't had a chance to actually sit face to face. And so it's really great to actually meet you. But before I met you, I was like, I love this guy's energy. Whatever he's cooking up, I want some of that. And we've stayed in touch, and you've got a big project.
Yes.
That's about to launch. Thursday. So today we're talking more about men.
Yes.
Because that's a really hot topic in the world. And it is for me, and it is for you. And it's this discovery and this dance between men, toxic masculinity. What is a man? What is a powerful man in the world? What is a grounded, empowered, powerful man in the world? What does that actually mean? Because masculinity is not just for men, right? Masculinity is an energy. It's an element of it's a combination of things, just like femininity is. And as I identify as female, I have breasts and a pussy, and I am very masculine in a lot of ways, right? Like I carry this masculine energy too. So pulling that apart as well. And I'm fascinated with this conversation. As I was sharing with you, I just recorded a conversation yesterday with this amazing woman, Corinne Laperfido, and she's incredible. Her episode will be coming up at some point soon. And we were talking a lot about men and, giving women spaces where women can just be freely and fully expressed and not have to worry about twerking on the dance floor and having some dude come up behind them and, stick their, crotch or their penis in their crotch, And just the catcalling and and then there's this other side of that, right? Where to me, it's almost like an illusion that men come off as super confident, this idea that, men think they're great at everything and great at, in bed and great at whatever. I actually don't believe that's true. I think there's a lot of masking going on and hiding insecurities, deep insecurities that are there, big questions that haven't been asked yet, and where I actually believe that men are looking for permission and ways to become more expressed and more vulnerable, and to say, actually, I'm not sure if I really am great at eating pussy because, I just do what I do and I hope that I'm pleasing my partner, but actually I'm not quite sure whether I'm doing it right. And I sure hope I am, but I'm not convinced, right? So yeah, we're going to get into all of that and more today.
Great.
Cool. So, okay, you have a book.
Yes.
That is coming out this week?
The book launches on the 13th, December 13th. You'll probably hear this in 2019. So December 6th, 2018 is when the book's coming out.
Cool. So we're recording today. It is December 1st.
Yes.
We're here in Los Angeles, and we'll get this out before the end of the year.
Okay.
Yeah. So we're here pre-book launch.
Yes.
And tell us what the title of the book is.
The book is called Unhidden, a book for men and those confused by them.
Yay!
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, which pretty much is written for everyone.
Totally.
That's the idea.
Yeah. Right? Because we're all confused.
Well, your introduction, your soliloquy, is a definition of someone confused by men.
Totally.
Because men are confusing.
Yes.
Which is also antithetical, because we think women are confusing and men are simple. But it's not. It's not true. Everyone's complicated. Everyone's confusing. And no one's talking truly about it, especially to your partners. So the confusion and the disconnection that arises from the confusion continues.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so talk to us about where did the inspiration come? Where did you start to get the message that this book is like coming through you? Take us back.
I've been a writer my entire life.
Okay.
I was, 12 years old, 13 years old, writing stories, and I actually wrote a full book when I was 17 years old.
Wow.
It was about my trials and tribulations in high school. Basically, all my insecurities was in that, 100-page manuscript that obviously didn't go anywhere. And so I've been a writer my entire life. And then when about 2 years ago, at the end of 2016, my wife, Morgan, was nudging me. She's like, you have to write a book. And I was like, I don't want to write a book. It's a pain in the ass. And I went to writing books and I don't write a book. She's like, you got to write a book. And so she really was my muse to encourage me to, go forth. And so I have a podcast called Tough Love. And so in 2017, what I did is I took my favorite 25 episodes, I transcribed them, and I rewrote them in English rather than, podcast rant speak. And in 3 months, I had a 45,000 word manuscript. Then I went to Hay House, which is a really powerful publisher, and they had a writer's clinic. And at the writer's clinic, they offered a contest that one person from the audience would get a book contract if they wrote a proposal. So there were like 250 people in the audience. And I was like, okay, I'll try it. I hired Kelly Notaris of KN Literary Arts, a friend of mine, as my book editor. And she read my proposal of this 45,000 word manuscript, and she said, this is good, but there's this one line in your proposal that really caught my attention. She's a professional. She's been in the book business 25 years. Actually, just wrote a book about how to write a book, which I highly recommend, Kelly Notaris. She said, there's one sentence that we live behind optimized social media profiles. She's like, I like that. And she's like, you also need to write a book for men because there's not many great books out there for men. There's some, but not many. And you should call it Unhidden. So really in this 10-minute conversation, she was the one to reflect back to me what she saw was my greatest book potential. Cool. And it was like the lights, bing, 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 bing.
Yeah.
And so I took that proposal, I organized it, I put pen to paper on January 1st of this year. I've worked a lot of hours. I hired a book coach, I call it book mistress, to boss me around. 8 versions later, it's at press, and it's going to be on Amazon. I'm working on the audiobook this month, so that'll be done by the end of the year. So yeah, it's a beautiful 50,000 word book called Unhidden, a book for men and those confused by them. So
high five.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay, so I want to go back to your comment about the 100-page manuscript.
Yes. Oh, okay.
That didn't go anywhere.
Yeah.
I just think that's such bullshit.
What's that?
That it didn't go anywhere.
I was 17 years old.
Well, but you're here now.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
And the 100-page manuscript served.
Of course.
Right? It did go somewhere. It's you. Right. It's you and your life and your journey.
Right.
So, hello.
Yeah. And it has a really twist in the tail at the end. So it's kind of good. Like, you could look at my sophomoric writing, 15 years old, I started, finished, I think, when I started college. So it was like, 2.5 years in the making. So you could watch the really sophomoric writing. By the end, like, I had gotten some acumen in how to write. So it's kind of a fun book. So I think it has a place somewhere. I have like 9 books. Amazing. Already. There's a book of poetry I want to put out. There's a communication workbook I'm working on that should actually be out in January. So I'm not going to stop with this one book.
Great. And okay, so anyways, I love that. I want to know more about that. Okay. And And I'm so excited that this first book is coming out,
Yes.
like official. So we're talking about men and the confusion,
Yep.
right? Like men are confused. I know I'm confused by men.
Right.
I don't understand why a man shows interest and then they never call,
Yep.
or why they invite me on a trip and then they never like schedule it and book it and then just sort of like disappear for weeks on end. You know, and I could certainly look at my own experience and say like, oh, energy ebbs and flows. Sometimes the energy's there, sometimes it's not. You know, as a single woman in the world right now, it's like there's a lot of different energy around me.
Yes.
Right? So like I may be seeing this person and then they're on the other side of the country and then I meet this person and like my energy goes there because they're where I live, and then, you know, and it's just sort of like this ebb and flow. So what are some of the sort of key topic areas that you cover in the book?
The first is that the world is changing. So that's, you know, one of the first chapters. I think it's chapter 5. So the world is changing and men are a little bit lost. So here's kind of an overview of what I found. So the patriarchy has been around for about 6,000 years. Depending on the historian, it started anywhere from 3,500 to 4,000 BCE.
Wow.
So 6,000 years, men have been in this, quote, power position of higher than women. Women's suffrage movement started in 1848.
Wow.
So 170 years ago. So that was the first time that was really declared that we found where women was like, let's have equality, let's have a right, women's right to vote. 1848. So that was like this big spark. It took 70 years for women to get the right to vote with the 19th Amendment in 1920. So that was 100 years ago. So if you look at where we are now to 100 years ago, which is a fraction of the 6,000 years, it's actually a minute amount of time. And then the 30s and 40s and 50s and 60s. And what happened in the 60s and 70s is that the educators started to make action creating equality between men, or boys and girls. Let's go, boys and girls being under 18. I use these terms deliberately. So they started to create programs for girls in the 1960s and 70s, especially around the areas of STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. And what they did is they started to create these programs for girls, but not create complementary programs for boys. Things they were needed: empathy, emotional intelligence, communication, vulnerability. They didn't have similar programs. And so what we've seen, and there's a lot of statistics to back this, in the last 50 years is girls, young women, and women rising up in power, and men are basically have stayed the same. There's an epic book called The End of Men by Hannah Rosen, which really goes over this in details. I absorbed that book and she does it in a very value neutral description. It's just like this great writer. And so I really got a lot from that. There's also books like called Man Interrupted. Philip Zimbardo, who did the Stanford prison experiment, that he wrote a book with a co-writer basically describing where boys and men are today. And all the statistics are really showing the rise of women, not saying they're equal in any shape or form, but rising, men staying the same. And what's happened is men are in what's called aggrieved entitlement, which is a Michael Kimball quote. He wrote a book called Angry White Men, and he actually wrote a bunch of books, but Angry White Men in Guyland. And he talks about this aggrieved entitlement, where men just think they deserve the job, they deserve the power position, they deserve to be in the highlight. But what's happening is the world is changing. Women are like, basically, fuck that. You know, I don't believe that anymore. I want my own credit card. I want my own security. I want to make my own choices. And men, instead of seeing like, wow, this is a great time to be alive, they're getting entitled, they're getting mad, they're getting angry, they're getting just quitting. So we're seeing that decrease. So what's really happening is that women rising up and men are shrinking.
Interesting. Well, and so it's not all men, right?
No. This is the bell curve. The danger of these statistics is you look at the bell curve. So I am fortunate to live in a bubble where the men I know are all at the top level doing significant personal development work, great teachers, great coaches, great writers, great people. You know, one of my clients is this normal guy from Pennsylvania. Like he'll actually be on the at the book launch that we
Cool.
can talk about. He's this normal guy that I've been working with for a year, and he was as like straight laced and vanilla as possible. Then his wife cheated on him. I have permission to talk about this just so no one thinks I'm breaking confidentiality. So
Yeah.
his wife cheated
Thank
on
you.
him, and then he had the choice. He had the choice to say she's a bad person. There's something wrong with her. She was the villain. Or he could look at through the coaching and conversations was, how did I co-create this? She talked a lot about wanting to be with other men. He ignored it. He pushed it down. He used his force to keep her small. And then finally she's like, well, if he's not going to listen, I'm going to go do this anyway. This is a communication. And what's happened because she did that, then they're in a non-monogamous relationship. He moved from Pennsylvania to California. He's having the time of his life because instead of going into the old script of she's bad, he said, wow, I kind of co-created this. How do we use this energy to both have what we want? And he's my hero. Like I told him, you're my hero because he keeps going against his programming to co-create a new life.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, and it's interesting because I shared this recently. I met a man at this Esther Perel event, and he was saying that, like after 20 years with his wife, things got a little bit stagnant, and, it was just sort of like they would make love, but there wasn't any like thrill or excitement around it. And one day he was picking her up from yoga and he saw this man flirting with her. And it sparked something in him. And then it sparked a conversation between them. And they talked about, like, do we open this up? Do we, like, what do we do? And first of all, I so respect and honor couples who can have those conversations openly.
Yeah.
And sure, you might feel scared or jealous or worried or whatever. And put it out there, and because they started having these conversations and he started realizing, wow, I got really turned on by seeing other men desire my wife. They're having like sex like they had when they first got together, and there's something that is so beautiful about that. So infidelity, curiosity, it has the potential to create way more intimacy, uncover something completely new.
Yeah, that's one of the theses of Esther Perel's book is the concept of what turns us on. No, it's a mixture of novelty and security. So it's very complicated because we look to the same person to provide the same thing. And so she talks about what rebuilds attractiveness, what rebuilds excitement is watching your partner flirt or feel confident or powerful, but you're inside of them. Like you can watch them from afar so you know they're not straying. And so it's a very interesting dynamic. And my whole life was created, or this whole world was created on one conversation of honesty. I think we talked about in the previous podcast at Burning Man of just my honesty with my first wife of, you're not the last woman in my life I want to kiss. It's really as simple as that. So I don't prescribe any specific relationship form, but I do prescribe honesty because we live in a world that teaches us to be mediocre communicators. We're taught to lie, we're taught to withhold, we're taught to worry about the other person's ego, not stir the boat. Things are going so well, why should I tell the truth? But that's what leads to mediocrity. That's what leads to boredom. And if you want to spark up your relationship, if you want to just add more energy, it is one truth. It can be one simple thing. But we don't, A, feel confident to do it, and B, don't make it safe for the other person to do that. So we're co-creating, like my client, we're co-creating mediocrity because we live in a hidden lifestyle.
Yeah. So where do we go from here? Like with let's talk about toxic masculinity.
Okay.
And what impact that has had on relations, our society, sex and sexuality.
It's a killer. There's no other way to put it. Like Me Too was a huge wake-up call. And to me, it was just finally the volcano erupting of 6,000 years of women being in a role of I'm just going to grin and bear it. I'm not going to rock the boat. I'm not going to tell him the truth. Now we're leaving. We're at a point now in society where there are more single American adults than those in couples for the first time in history. We just popped over to 50.1%.
Really?
The first time in history. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And if you look at the statistics of marriages, when people are getting married has gone from 21 to 26 and 27. Like we're seeing epic changes in a really short time frame of less than, let's say, 100 years, when things changed right around 1920 with women's right to vote. So where do we go from here? Is toxic masculinity has a huge impact, and there's two things I think really need to happen. That's going to come so simple out of my mouth, but I know they're ultimately complex of how to have it. So women need to speak and men need to listen. Like women need space to bring up their pain, their angst every single time they've been discounted, every time they've been touched inappropriately, every time they've been in a situation where they felt fear. They need space to be able to bring that out to their male partner, so their male partner knows. Now, this doesn't have to be like a therapy session. Like you can go to therapy first and process. You can go to women's groups. You can go to group therapy. You can do your plant medicine. You can do your journaling. I'm not saying your partner should be your therapist, but I am saying it's important for women to communicate, because men do not know the impact they have on women. They seriously don't know. What's so obvious for women, that catcall felt like crap. Men are just like, woo, it doesn't matter. If she didn't like it, she would have done something about it. No. So men don't know their impact. So women need to speak and men need to listen. And the time of off-gassing this 6,000 years of pain is not going to be a day. It's not going to be a week. It's not going to be a year. It's going to be a generation. But if women are willing to speak and process and have space for it, men are willing to listen and be in presence and not take it personally, to really just listen, to learn, then there's a chance of forgiveness and deeper connection.
And what about the men? Who's listening to them?
Well, men have what I call the double trap. So men are in a place where things are changing and they're suffering and they're confused and they're angry and they're in their aggrieved entitlement. And because we're in the patriarchy, because we're the white privileged class, I'm really speaking about white cisgendered males, no one thinks they have a right to complain. So what do? They stuff it down. They push it deep into their soul. They push it into their shadow. And then what happens? That part of them comes out in more toxic behavior. So men don't feel safe enough to speak their truth. And so one of my main theses of the book is, guys, this is what's happening. You got to handle this. I'm not saying how to do it. I'm just saying do something. Even, I had a friend of mine who said, if you walked out to a lamppost and talked to a lamppost for 15 minutes every single day, your life would improve. Which of course felt great for the coaching industry, but but it's true.
Yeah.
It's like you need to uncover those things. You need to bring them out. You can speak if you're afraid you can't afford a therapist or don't want to go to a 12-step group or afraid to talk to your guy friends. Pick up your phone and record your thoughts for 5 minutes a day and dump those out there and start to bring those into the light. Write, journal. So my point is that men need to start to bring what's inside out of the shadow into the light, start to examine their pain, their anger, their entitlement, and then do the work to up-level it and optimize their relating, especially to women.
Yes, it's a recognition of there's something inside of me.
Yep.
It's not moving.
Yep.
I'm not speaking it to anyone.
Right.
I'm not sharing it. I'm withholding from my partner or my whoever. And then I think about the impact of caregivers on children.
Okay.
And so something that comes up for me is like the impact of mothers on sons.
Sure.
And the impact of fathers on sons.
Yep.
Right? And because I have a lot of compassion for the male journey, the men journey in the world. And I mean, it goes without saying that I'm a woman. I've been a woman my entire life. I empathize deeply and have so much compassion for women
Sure.
and humans, really, right? We're living in, we're all human beings hurling through space on planet Earth and trying to figure it out, right? And so, men, from my estimation, we all need space to express, to be heard, to be seen, to be loved, to heal. And there's a big impact that I've seen on people in my life, from the caregiver to the child. And then, like mothers and sons have a complex relationship. So have you covered any of that? Have you done any study or research on that piece?
Not my area of expertise.
Okay.
It is something I'm very interested in. And a lot of stuff I read is really intriguing. So, the book I mentioned, Michael Kimmel's Guyland, which I'm only about halfway through, so I know I read the first part. It's such a good book. And so there's a story in this part where he talks about, in the African American community, a father bringing a son to the barber is a rite of passage. So the father brought the son to the barber. The barber was doing his work using chemicals, and then the chemicals stung, and the boy started to cry. And so the barber said, "What's up with your boy? He's spending too much with his mama. He's a mama's boy. Like this is you need to handle this." And so the father, who was, not spending a lot of time with his son, went home and said, "I'm going to spend more time with my son. You can't spend, coming too weak. He's too soft." The kid was 3.5 years old.
Wow.
So that is just an example, and it's not an outrageous example. I'm sure myself as a boy, I remember my dad pulling me up and saying, "Don't cry," and there's all these negative messages of who a boy should be. And the mother's side, I was a replacement husband for my absent father. So my father was a businessman. He built a business in the 1970s and 1980s. He came home every night, but during tax season, he was gone. And so I became my mother's companion, especially when my older sister went off to school. And so there's a lot of competition, I've realized, between me and my dad. There's a lot of anger. There was a lot of my mom using me to wake my dad up. There's a lot of dynamics. So while this is not my area of expertise, there is a lot of dynamics that are important to pay attention to. And as a new co-parent, my wife Morgan, we have an 8 and 10-year-old, both girls. I'm learning the epic challenge of children and relearning how to raise them, reparenting myself, because I'm using all my dad's habits with them, which Morgan does not let me use, which means I need to come up with new techniques. And it's a whole complex game.
Wow.
So anyway, the answer to the question is yes, highly impactful, though there's some really great books out there that probably do this more justice than I could.
Yeah, cool. Well, and so what else has become crystal clear to you in this process of writing this book?
Well, there's my own personal relationship that, you write books and I tell a lot of personal stories. In the 8 versions, and there's probably 40 different stories I've used and cut significant of them. The main one I've really discovered was my relationship to my desire, the connection of desire and shame. So my belief system, and I wrote an article about this, is that men's toxic behavior is due to their lack of connection to both their desire and their shame. Everyone has shame in some degree, but men are not taught to interact with their shame. We're taught to run it over. We're taught to push it down. We're taught not to pay attention to it. And so in the process of not addressing their shame, it goes in the shadow and runs the show. The same thing with their desire. Like, I think catcalling is an outgrowth of men not able to be with the possibility of rejection, with the clear communication, with confronting. And so they do these drive-by communications with some way to speak their desire. She's an attractive woman. I'm feeling sexual desire. I don't know what to do. So I'm just going to say something lewd with some ridiculous belief that she's going to turn around like, "Oh, that really turned me on," which never works. I think catcalling is the most inefficient communication technique ever. So the point is, like, I've discovered my own relationship with desire and shame. A lot of my shame had to do with my mother's reaction to my food. My grandmother was a bulimic, non-diagnosed in her time. My mom had anorexic, mostly undiagnosed, and I was a very healthy, sugar-loving child of the 70s and 80s who loved all things gluten and white sugar and cookies. And so my mom pushed down my shame, my desire for hunger, which put it into the shadow, and that's impacted my entire life now as an adult relating to women. So there's so much in there.
Oh my gosh,
It's
the
a mess.
layers.
The human condition is a mess, basically, when it comes into it.
And so let's just touch on the confusion piece.
Okay.
Unhidden, a book for men and those confused by them.
Yes. So there's two ways a man or someone else could read this book. I'm imagining, this is, say women make this simple. So I'm imagining a woman read this book and read the words and get some clues, ideas, and concepts and some reality in terms of what goes on for a man. So my hoping is they'll just read it and be like, oh, that's what's happening. Well, that's what's happening. Then at the end, I have 5 very direct essays about how those who love men can improve. And it really starts off with, listen, I'm just going to be blunt. You've co-created this mess. Women have co-created this mess. Okay? I'm not saying men are innocent in any shape or form, but women are the co-creators of their realities and the mess that we're in. So the essays are really built to offer 5 very tough love with love and approval concepts of how they can improve their relationships with men, how to bring out the best in him, how to understand how much shame, things we talked about, how, just really clues about what's happening so they can just be in better relationship with these complex beings.
It makes me think of Alison Armstrong's work.
Yeah.
She's
amazing.
She's amazing.
One of the best in the business, actually.
Totally. She's been on the podcast.
Yeah.
Her episode is the most listened to episode.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Find it. It's frog farming and all sorts of other good juicy stuff. And, women emasculate men.
Right.
It's a problem.
Yep. And mothers, to go back to, I think, the main point, is mothers' unresolved anger towards men impact their relationship with their sons.
Totally.
Yeah.
And their daughters.
For sure.
So it's up to us. I'm a parent.
Yes.
You're a parent.
Yes.
Right? So I have seen how I've handed my daughter my shit.
Yes.
Here, take this is my shit. Now it's yours. Right?
And she's loyal to you, wants mom to be happy, and so she'll carry it for you. This is actually my wife's Morgan's expertise, but she'll carry you as loyalty to you.
Well, see, my daughter actually says, no.
Good.
That's your shit,
Right.
Mom. That's not mine.
Right.
And I'm like, yes, you're right.
Yeah.
You're right. Thank you. So I call my daughter the voice of reason because she calls me on my stuff all the time.
Right.
And it's really helpful. And there is a huge responsibility that all of us have to shift the tides of this.
Yes.
This conversation, this experience, these interactions, and to start to take responsibility for ourselves, to be responsible for each other. And to me, it all starts with self-love. And until I was 29, I had no idea what self-love meant, what it looked like. It was totally in the dark. And I started the journey of self-love. And I am completely unrecognizable. I'm still who I am.
Sure.
And in so many ways unrecognizable to who I was 12 years ago, 11 years ago. So this is just my, encouragement to say, let us all just journey on the path of self-love, discovering what that is, learning how to be kind and loving to ourselves, noticing when we're not being kind and loving to ourselves and others, and in the moment being able to say, let me do that. Can I try that again? And, and then for the other person to be generous enough to say, yes, so this is amazing. Thank you for who you be in the world.
Thank you.
For this book, for birthing something new and being courageous And I love like the loving toughness lovingness.
Well, we need it.
We need it.
We need
We
it.
need it. We
Time
need
to
we need wake
crack.
up calls.
Yeah.
Yeah, we need to crack our identity open. We need to crack the core of ourselves open and say what else is possible. So what I know is possible is a world that is peaceful and harmonious, where the weapons of war literally disintegrate in thin air, where we are in love with ourselves and each other, all people, all beings, and where there's unity and peace and harmony. So,
Amen.
love you, Robert.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, where can people find you in the book? And
Everything can be found via my website, robertkandell.com. The book, my podcast, my writing. I'm doing communication courses in 2019. I have an online program, communication workbook, yada, yada. It's all can be found at robertkandell.com, including links to my social media. Very active on Instagram, so you
Great.
can find me there as well.
And what about the book?
The book you can order. There'll
Okay.
be plenty of links there to
Great.
purchase, and it's going on Amazon, and the audiobook should be done by the end of the year.
Cool.
So I know men like audiobooks more than written books often, and it's been really fun to record those
Awesome.
pieces too.
Amazing. So,
you.
robertkandell.com.
Yes.
And on Instagram, it's just Robert Kandell.
It's robert.kandell on Instagram.
Great. Okay, perfect. So you heard it here, Ignite Intimacy Community. Thank you so much for joining us. We're talking about Unhidden, a book for men and those confused by them, with Robert Kandell. What a pleasure. Big up yourselves, love each other, and stick around. Stay tuned and stay blessed until we see you on the next one. Ciao for now. Thanks for tuning in to another conversation on the Ignite Intimacy podcast hotline. We love that you choose to spend your time with us. Check us out at igniteintimacy.com. Subscribe to us on iTunes and leave us a review and a rating. It helps more people know about us. We love to hear from you. You can email us with questions, comments, or suggestions to hello@igniteintimacy.com. And tell your friends. Music was arranged by Jason Pfaff and Mike Corey, and this podcast is produced by yours truly, Laura Aisha. Thanks again, and we'll see you on the next one. In the meantime, let your light shine bright and ignite your intimacy.